Bart,
what's the mug?
What's the mug today?
But first, coffee,
Yes.
which is actually the second thing I did today because this is my second cup of coffee. So,
well, it's when you and I were going back and forth about what to talk about, we were not at a.
I can't imagine where this was going. I can't imagine. Such an arid, like Atacama desert of a week for nothing for our resident official to talk about.
Oh, well, first and foremost, because of what happened last night, I want to start with women's national team because we know that most of our conversation is going to be garnered toward officiating. We need to get into Mallory Swanson. We need to get into the injury there and what you've seen with these matches against Ireland. So, open-ended question, Mallory Swanson, go.
It sucks because as much as the U.S. women have incredible depth, especially at that winger position, Mal provided the just chaos button that no one else can provide. That at any given point in a match, even more so than Sophia Smith, Mal could just go score a goal. It sucks because I think that she was, as we've seen throughout the Vlatko reign, especially since the Olympics, there's been a lot of inconsistent play. There's been a lot of inconsistent offensive buildup, and Mal was a solution to that because she was able to just kind of make things happen on her own. Obviously, at this point, she had scored. Obviously, she didn't score last game. She had scored in 7 straight U.S. women's games, or games in total. So that sucks for the team. It sucks for Mal, who was looking at becoming this could have been a star-making tournament for her, right? I think she and Sophie Smith were the two that you were looking at as possibly, and I don't know if we would have scored that many goals, but possibly Golden Boot winners, possibly Golden Ball winners if you go far enough. I mean, this was the type of tournament that they were looking to have and that they were going to have for the U.S. to get a 5th star. So from that standpoint, this is devastating news because I love Trinity. Alyssa Thompson played pretty well last night. Mm-hmm. I love Lynn Williams, but they're not Mal Pugh. Mal is the only person in the world who does what she can do. And this affects how the team will perform for sure.
And, when you're looking at all of these, I'm just going to go to questions here. Bart, how do you feel about the fact that Ireland has a much more clearly defined playing idea?
Yeah, their defined playing ideas: defend, and kick the crap out of you. So, if that's where you want to go, that's an easy playing style to use. They did that very well. Their playing style is the reason that Mal Swanson is not going to the World Cup this summer. But, sure. Yeah, they have a defined playing style. You're right.
And
it's not one I would want.
Right. And Bernd also says that Vlatko is a really underwhelming coach.
Yeah, I think that's where we're at. And I'm not going to pile on Vlatko because I still think that at the time, and this is where people love to look at things in this, at this moment in 2023.
Right.
But at the time, Vlatko was a pretty much no-duh choice. And when you look at the candidates that we could have had, Paul Riley was one, and one that I personally did advocate for. And I'll put my hand up and say that was obviously wrong for a lot of reasons. But Vlatko ended up being the guy who probably was, at that point in time, was one of the best choices you could have made, given the resources U.S. Soccer had and the scope at which they were looking. It's been frustrating to see a man who created some really good attacking play in NWSL not be able to replicate that for the women's national team with much better talent. I think that at times last night we saw, again, where we're at our best, which is counter pressing high, winning the ball back and creating opportunities that way. And I still think that this team is very good at that and will cause problems for a lot of teams doing that. The problem is defensively, we've been really bad. And I don't mean giving up goals necessarily, but I think I counted like 4 times each game where we were just so imbalanced that teams had multiple players on one side of the field open, at least one wide open on the far touchline, able to collect a switch and go. And we didn't even have a fullback back there. So now we've got center backs trying to cover, and that was problematic. That's where I've been really frustrated, is defensively we've been too easy to get good looks on. Vlatko's not been a great coach. I think if you've listened to Jason or I talk about the past 2 World Cups, though, Jill Ellis wasn't a great coach either, especially when it came to tactics. So, there's that. I don't think that Jill Ellis is a tactical mastermind. Let's just say that.
Yep.
Yeah, no. I think going into the last World Cup, we were picking the U.S. to lose in the semifinal because we thought Jill Ellis was going to get outflanked tactically.
Right. And I don't think she didn't, Jarrett. I think that, again, she was the beneficiary of having a group of women. To England. We could have lost England. We escaped the game against Spain. I don't think we escaped the France game, but we did win because of Megan Rapinoe being brilliant. And so I do think that at some point, and we just saw this at this past summer, having game-changing players, this past winter, does help you. Argentina with Angel Di Maria, that's a good player to have, even though your tactical setup was pretty good. When you have Di Maria, Messi, Enzo Fernandez, guys like that, that's pretty good. France, a very good tactical setup, still has, hot take, the best player right now in Kylian Mbappe, the most dynamic player anyway. It helps to have that and several other players on their team who are really good. So, I think when you're looking at the U.S., if you can just find a way to be a little bit more secure defensively, to allow what still will be probably the best attacking 3 you're going to put out there of anyone. If your attacking 3 are Lynn Williams or Trinity Rodman, Sophia Smith, and Alex Morgan, we're still in a good spot. I know Mal is not having her would be terrible, but we're still in a darn good spot. So yeah, we still have the talent, and that's where Vlatko just needs to figure out a better way to let that talent unlock itself. And he hasn't done a great job of that, especially in the past year and a half when we've been playing some more sophisticated teams.
One more question from David in the Twitch pitch before we get into refereeing down here. Heavy on my Ashley Hatch slander, but does she hate Trinity Rodman? Yesterday late, Rodman was running the left channel 1v4, and instead of running to the near or far post, she circles around Rodman to pull more defenders toward Trinity. Why does she continually seem to work to put Trinity Rodman in tough spots? Low soccer IQ, or is it personal?
They play on the same club team, y'all. So maybe. I don't have any insight to that. I don't know the personal relationships between Trinity and Ashley Hatch, but they do play on the same club team, and Washington Spirit has struggled over the past year, so that could be it. But I think Ashley Hatch has also come down from the high of scoring a bunch of goals. I'm honestly not quite sure why she's still fully included in the women's national team, other than the fact that obviously Katarina Macario is unhealthy. I don't love to bring up this name because it causes a lot of drama on women's soccer Twitter, but you've got Mia Fischel, who is scoring a lot of goals down in Mexico, who I think would be probably an upgrade to Hatch. I don't know if it's a significant upgrade, but probably a slightly better player than Ashley Hatch is currently. I think Ashley Hatch is playing for her life, literally. She's trying to make this squad, because if Macario comes back and is healthy, I would be hard to rationalize Katarina Macario staying home over Ashley Hatch going.
Okay, Jarrett, I have 6 incidents on my sheet. 5 of them from one game and 1 of them from overseas. Pick your first one, Jarrett, and go.
Let's torment everybody overseas.
Okay.
I want everyone to suffer. Nothing personal, y'all.
So
if you've been in the Discord, you know this.
Yes. So the Hatzidakis incident in the Liverpool-Arsenal match that is currently being investigated about Hatzidakis allegedly elbowing a Liverpool player in the throat as he was being approached at the end of a half. I don't know how much you have either heard / seen / ingested informationally about this particular incident, but my thing first and foremost is, bruh, you don't go up to an AR to try to talk about things after 45 minutes.
Yeah, I think that's where I'm going to start the conversation at is, again, why do players feel like they're allowed to just encroach the personal space of referees whenever they feel like it? Yet the moment a referee crosses into their, sphere, all of a sudden it's an infringement on their human rights. I do think that we need to look at it a little bit through that lens. I don't think that a referee initiating contact with the player is ever a good thing. But again, my personal view, and again, I'm the referee in this situation, is why do y'all feel like you're allowed to just approach us, especially from behind, by the way, and probably barking at you the whole way, and not, if you were to do that to an opponent, you wouldn't, because you know that there's going to be some sort of repercussion for it. So why do you think you get to do that to the referee? And then to Liverpool players, the whole frickin' game, while they're kicking an Arsenal player left and right, are diving every chance they get. So I don't really this is where the fan comes in a little bit. I don't have a whole lot of sympathy for you as Liverpool players, because y'all got every call that you possibly could have wanted in that game. And now you're mad over something that may or may not have happened in the first half.
Right.
But I don't, if you're going to, any human, if you just come up and invade the personal space of another human while also yelling at them, what do you think is going to happen here?
Yeah, you're going to get the shoulder turn. You're going to get the what are you up to, look and part of the conversation. So have you in your past had any kind of confrontation to that degree?
Not a physical altercation, but I've had 2 people try to make something physical. Luckily, their teammates and the rest of the people playing were on my side, at least, and the side of not trying to cause a fight. It happens, especially when you have adult men who don't go to therapy, and this is their only form of therapy. It happens.
Yeah. All right, Jarrett, we've gone overseas. Where do you want to start in the Bronx?
The field? That's not regulation.
Yeah, somebody mentioned that. Somebody mentioned that Grant Wall once allegedly walked it off and said it was 70, and God rest Grant Wall.
Yeah. Peter Vermes walked it off and said it was 67.
Yeah, I'm less inclined to believe that it is 70. That's just me. We can talk about the field. I guess.
No, we don't need to.
Okay, well, let's talk about this then. This is something I haven't been able to talk to you in the last 2 weeks because I was out of town on spring break with my daughter. This is something we talked about on Twitter, and I wanted to expand upon it. It's having the right official for the right game.
Yeah.
Knowing that Atlanta and New York Red Bulls don't really get along. They always tend to play street fights, and putting an official in charge of that game who clearly wasn't ready for just the amount of raw violence.
Yeah, I think I feel for Chilowitz in that Red Bulls game, because he approached the game as if soccer was going to be played. And the Red Bulls, I've just come to this conclusion, they do every other sport but soccer. If you involve a soccer ball, I feel like they don't know what to do.
No,
right? So that's the Red Bull style of play.
Ball has cooties, and they don't want anything to do with it.
So I don't think Chilowitz had the right mindset going in, and he very quickly lost control of the match. But I will give him a lot of credit because he gave a persistent infringement yellow card in the first half to a Red Bulls player. At least I assume it was a persistent infringement. It was a guy who had fouled a guy a couple times.
Yeah.
And he did try in managing the game outside of the fouls he was calling, because that got very inconsistent. And consistent foul calling is something that is one of the hardest things as a referee to get right, because unlike in the NFL per se, we have a lot of factors that go into is a situation a foul, and then furthermore, do I call the foul? We're also really the only person out there, the center referee, who's going to call a foul. We do have assistant referees who have kind of their scope of power in that regard, but they're not fully. A lot of times, assistant referees aren't fully comfortable or fully empowered to make calls like that. It's more of a, especially when you have a comm system, you're talking about, yeah, that's a foul, that's not a foul. And a lot of times the assistant referee is just putting their flag up in confirmation. Or the assistant referee may say, hey, was that a foul? And they go, yeah, and then they'll put the flag up. So I think that's another problem that soccer just inherently has, is we're one dude out there with 22 players, and even like different than rugby, which also kind of only has one. The flow of play, while there may be a direction of play, the flow is not always in the same way, right? In rugby, you have a scrum, you have a back pass, and you try to go forward. Like there's a direction of travel, whereas in soccer, there's not quite that either. You have 22 players who, in theory, could be doing 22 different things. So, I think that the center referee does struggle with that when you're talking about a Red Bulls team that is so physically violent on the field.
And getting into the idea of protecting players, you better make your but first coffee sip here. The discussion over the last 2 weeks on Brad Gazan basically getting trucked by Corey Burke 2 weeks ago.
Yep.
Then getting, and I'm going to go ahead and say it, getting rolled over by Gabe Siegel in NYCFC. Yet there is no repercussion except for Atlanta United not having their number one keeper for 10 to 12 weeks because of an MCL injury. And the notion of not even giving a card in the second instance, and I know that, and folks on the Twitch pitch, Coco, does Pro have a new initiative to get Brad hurt, not punish anyone who runs into him? I don't know if that's in the rules of Pro.
Corey Burke did get a yellow card. Let's not pretend like he wasn't punished. I mean,
right.
he was cautioned for that, and we got a foul. So, these are both parallel, but not necessarily the same.
So we put Corey Burke to the side, because that was 2 weeks ago. Corey Burke to the side 2 weeks ago. Purata and Siegel are in back pursuit. Brad is coming out to try to close the distance and grab the ball. And Siegel obviously ends up just trucking Brad, and you get nothing out of it. You don't even get any kind of, we don't know if there was a review and there was any notification to Drew Fisher. We don't know if there was any communication at all. But regardless of that, now Atlanta United is missing their number one keeper for the next 10 to 12 weeks.
Yeah, so what I noticed about this is that Fisher did not respond to the situation very well. It wasn't that he didn't give a yellow card. It was he almost seemed reluctant to call the foul. It seemed like he just called the foul on the just generic assumption that, the goalkeeper was kicked, run into, so I'll call a foul because that's a standard thing we kind of do, right? I'm surprised he wasn't making himself physically running into the incident to point out and be like, no, make it very clear, like, hey, this was wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I do understand. So I'm sorry, Atlanta United fans. I do understand why he did not give a yellow card or a red card, because probably from his view, he saw a defender and attacker running toward the ball, and unfortunately a collision with the goalkeeper. That is a very unfortunately common play in soccer where you have multiple people going to the ball. So I understand why he did not get a yellow card. I do. I still think that it is very much a yellow card offense for putting your foot at knee level, right, of any player. And I think that was missed. He missed that opportunity to at least address the situation better, because it seemed again like he was reluctant to even call a foul. Like, they got to call it here. And that to me was what bothered me. He did not acknowledge the severity of the situation that occurred.
All right, Jarrett, yours.
All right, cool. Let's do it. So we talked about this Monday, and wanted to talk about the Franco Ibarra one, because on the first look it was really weird, and then on like the second look, it's like, okay, yeah, that's like I thought it was a red after like looking at replays and getting to look at it more that night. In the moment, I didn't think it was. Watching replays, it looked like, I wanted to get your opinion on it. It looked like a red, but not the kind of like not the kind of malicious thing. Just unfortunate guys coming together.
Yeah, 100%. It's a red card because, like you said, it once you looked at it the second time, especially, you're like, oof, yeah. Mm-hmm. My theory personally is Fisher. Again, Fisher had a bad game because he missed that completely. The fact that he gave James Sands a yellow card for that, which I'm not saying he didn't deserve, but didn't give Ibarra a yellow card. You could have given both guys a yellow card for that, because that is reckless play, right? Yeah. Like that. We talked about this: careless, reckless, excessive force. Those are kind of our thresholds. And careless is your typical foul, like you acted without real care of the player. Reckless is, as a step up from that, where you have acted without real care for anything at that point in time. And then excessive force is you went in with the intent to cause harm. So I don't necessarily think that what Ibarra did was excessive force, but when you consider the placement of his studs, the pace at what he went, like, I get why it's a red card.
Yeah.
My theory is, had Fisher got the call right on the field and seen that Ibarra probably fouled the guy, studs a little high, and given him a yellow card in that moment, I don't think Ibarra gets a red card, because Fisher, through the VAR process, which again, I cannot answer why Sands got his yellow card taken away. I do not have any insight to that, because that doesn't follow my flow chart of what you can do through a VAR consultation.
Right.
So I don't know why Sands got his taken away, but had Ibarra been given a yellow card and Fisher looked at that through VAR and they're like, hey, maybe a red card, and he could have looked at it and go, no, like, I get what you're saying, but like, I gave him a yellow card because it was a reckless foul. I don't think it's excessive. Like, he would have had room to sit on the decision he made. Problem is, in the moment, his decision was nothing toward Ibarra. So the only other option at that point is nothing or red card. And
yeah,
it was Ibarra was going to see some color after that challenge. Let's just put it that way.
And then you get into, and we get into this a lot. Sadly, we get into it, I think, more than we should, but overcorrecting.
Yeah.
Where you have set a bar, you've registered a tone as a center ref.
Yeah.
And then, because of the temperature of the match, there is a tendency to overcorrect, and then you send the car careening into the other lane of traffic, and then you're doing this with the steering wheel the whole time. And I know that Coco and Will have been talking about the Yakamaki's yellow. It's like if you don't give the yellow in a situation earlier, then Yakumaki should not have a yellow. You're getting into the pro and overcorrecting element of all of this.
And I think so. One of the referees I work with, he's really fun referee to work with. He looks at his game in 3 phases. He has the set the tone phase, which is where he is trying to figure out what the match is giving, respond to that, and set that tone. Then he has the adjust the tone phase, where, okay, I have set the tone. What do I need to change? Because, 3 phases, you usually do have 3 phases of a soccer game, right? You have the start of the game, you have the middle of the game, you have the end of the game. So you have the set the tone phase, which is, this is where I'm going to be. You have the adjust the tone phase, which is, okay, the players things have changed in the match, right? Jason's line of goals change games. That changes how we have to officiate too, because, another team may respond, these things happen. So you have to kind of adjust how you're dealing it. You don't adjust play by play, but you do have to recognize, this match has shifted. The tone, the tempo, the temperature of this match has changed. And then you have at the end, you either have a maintain, which we're trying to keep that, or again, you have to adjust, right? Sometimes at the end of the match, you're trying to maintain the level you've set, but they also, the players, can change. So you have to look at it in almost like 3 phases of how you, as a referee, are trying to control the match. And it is a lot of adjustment because players on both sides change. We're all human. We're not robots. We don't go out there and just act the same way for 90 minutes. I think Fisher definitely overcorrected, but I also don't think that it was a particularly nasty match, if that makes any sense. Like, because even the Ibarra and Sands challenge, it was like, 2 guys went into the ball and unfortunately things happened. Like, that wasn't a sinister challenge by either player. And I think Gigi, if we want to talk about reputation, has developed a little bit of a reputation as a guy who kind of flies into tackles. We saw him get a yellow card against the Red Bulls for a tackle that was, I loved watching it as a fan, but as a referee, that's a yellow card. And so maybe he's developed that reputation. I don't know why Atlanta United is the only team in this league, apparently, that gets a negative reputation, but apparently we have for flying into challenges. So, but I agree. I think that the Gigi yellow card was a little weird, considering what we had seen earlier in that half.
I think that's where some of the frustration has come, in the sense of, like, you get a game that gets officiated pretty loosely, and maybe fouls are slanted one way, and it's being called a certain way, and then the other team decides, okay, well, if we're going to be calling it loose, we're going to start getting into tackles. They start getting into tackles, and then all of a sudden cards start flying. Like, and because I had this discussion yesterday with somebody about the Seagal thing of how angry people were about what happened in New York City, about, like, is Seagal going to be targeted? I'm like, it does you no good to target anybody, because going after somebody does not make Brad Guzan's leg heal faster. If anything, you reinforce a potentially negative perception that already exists, and you hurt yourself in that game in a season-long battle. Like, there's no benefit to it, and it sucks because you would love to be able to do something about it, but it just you can't in this case.
And Tafka has an interesting question. Can refs not have conversations with captains that have to let them know where the match is and how the second half will be ref to lessen heated play?
I mean, in theory, you're talking to players throughout the game. That would be probably something that I would like to see. For how do we communicate better with the players? That, hey, things are a little heated. We need to kind of bring it back down. You're also expecting that players are going to listen in that regard. So,
true.
Cynical me is looking at that as, not really. But you communicate this also through yellow cards and red cards. And, honestly, Atlanta United was called for fewer fouls. I think the red card, again, I think the ultimate decision was probably correct. It's not a red card. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah.
As Jarrett said, it, like, in the moment, you're like, oh, that's probably yellow. And then you watch replay 1 and 2 and you're like, ooh, yeah, that was bad. New York City got called for more fouls. They got 3 yellow cards. We didn't even get a yellow card, and we were the team playing for
yellow on no scissoring Gigi either.
Yeah, so we got the one yellow card after that. We didn't get anything, and that was I understand why the yellow card. I don't agree with it. I understand why he gave it. I think it's, again, inconsistent with what he had called previously, but that's whatever. It's not like we were shafted by the officials here. Like, I think that's the other thing, is we didn't get shafted. The outcome of the match wasn't really changed because of a decision by the official. The red card was probably a red card. I'm sorry, I'm getting into Atlanta United Twitter here a little bit, but Doug was correct to say it's a red card. But but at the same time, he was very clear about, like, I don't think that Ibarra did anything malicious. It just was a red card, unfortunately. Ibarra, he has to understand too that when you're making a tackle like that, you have to be a little bit more in control of yourself. I think he was going to try to kick the ball and missed because Sands got to it a little first, and that's what happens. But if you want to analyze every single micro incident, Atlanta United has also screwed up before. Like, so you can't just look at one team and the referee not calling things for that team, because we also probably got away with fouls. We also probably got away with some other yellow card offenses. So you can't just go, well, this referee did not call this, and this on New York City. And you go, well, he also probably didn't call this, and this on Atlanta. The outcome of that match was not dictated by the referee, even with a red card involved.
But I always feel like bringing you on with your unique perspective can help walk folks through the decision-making process and what we see, and add that extra bit of understanding to what we see, the process, how we see it, how it's implemented, how it's not implemented, and what to anticipate in these moments when you see something, or you see a match trending in one manner of play, and then something happens. Having you on here as that referee, that's why I like to bring you on, to add that perspective and that third eye.
I mean, we'll go back, Jared, a little bit, because we, as you said, we were talking about this on Twitter. The Red Bulls match is a very different type of match than the New York City match, but the amount of chaos is kind of equal when you're playing on that small field.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So I think there's going to be a lot of fouls, because you have 22 grown men on a field that I would say is probably fit for a U13 team.
75%, 75% less, or 20% less space. Surface.
Because it's not just the width, it's also the length. It is not a very long field. I mean, you're talking about it's a very short field as well, because if you think about just like mathematically, what Yankee Stadium, that left field line is probably 330,
maybe.
Right? I mean,
it's already a bandbox baseball stadium.
Right, exactly. So, Jarrett, like, the field is just small. You're going to have people run into each other.
Ted Uncle is the referee for Saturday's match at Toronto. Jair Marufo is listed as your VAR.
There's some egos.
The pitch is measured at 110 by 70. That is what is, according to the Wall Street Journal, 110 by 70.
Which is small. 110 is about the smallest you're going to be able to get on a legal size field. I mean, both of those measurements are at the minimum for a field, right? If they're measured correctly.
Yes.
The best way that I
by 70.
The best way I can tell you that to look for it, and someone on Twitter did point this out, so I'll give them credit. But you're supposed to have 10 yards from the corner arc to the penalty box, right? So if you take the penalty box as 44 yards long or wide, you add 10 yards, technically 11 to the in line, right, on each side. So that's 22. So 44 and 22 is what, 66?
Yes.
That is the minimum that you can get without having that hash mark. That hash mark on each side does look maybe 1.5 yards, but it's got to be 2. It's got to be at least 2 yards from the penalty box to be minimum 70.
Mm-hmm.
So I do question it, because that hash mark looks about a yard and a half, which doesn't meet the 70 yards requirement. But
yeah, like I said, yeah, Peter Vermes has it listed at 67. So when he walked it off,
I don't trust Peter Vermes to coach my team anymore, but I do trust him to get a measurement right.
Ain't that the truth?
Emilio, Emilio, FIFA, it depends on what FIFA regulation you're talking about. Are we talking World Cup? Because those regulations are different than Law 1, the field of play. Dimensions. The length, at minimum, 90 meters, which is 100 yards. The length of the goal line, at minimum, is 50 yards, right? So that's different. When we talk about international matches, the maximum is 75, the maximum is 80 yards, the minimum is 70. So it depends on which FIFA regulation you're talking about. It's not trying to host international matches. That's the first thing. We're not hosting an international match at Yankee Stadium. So there's soccer is weird because we do not have one set standard of like an American football field is 53 yards across and 110 plus 2 10-yard end zones, so 120. That is factually what it is. Soccer is malleable. You look at Atlanta United, we are different than Colorado, which has the biggest field in the league, by the way, and for reasons. You're going to put the biggest field in the league at the highest elevation. That makes sense. So you can't get too hung up on regulations. There are minimums, 110 by 70. That is the minimum that MLS has put out there. But the laws of the game and FIFA do have there's not one standard. Now, World Cups do have a standard. They want all the fields to be the same size for competition reasons. CONCACAF doesn't care about that. Obviously, you have a final in SoFi Stadium. But field regulations are malleable. Let's just put it that way. They are variable.
That's why I love baseball so much, that you can have field regulations that are different. Because even in soccer, I mean, I remember when Atlanta went and played a game in DC. I think in 2018 or 19, they played a game in DC, and DC just basically didn't cut the grass for a week and a half, so the grass would play slower. So because DC played a slower paced game, more long balls, and Atlanta wanted to play with the ball on the ground, and I mean, the grass was ass high on a tall moose in that game. You needed a machete to get through the midfield. So, yeah, you take advantages when you can find them.
Yes. What is the latest coming up for SoccerForUS POD there, Bart?
So we'll record an episode talking about these two women's friendlies. Probably talk a lot about Vlatko needing to do some coaching now that Mel Swanson's out. And then we'll look forward to what's supposed to be dropping today, the roster for the Continental Classico against Mexico next Wednesday. For the record, don't expect Miles Robinson to be on this. I have done no reporting. Just based on what Anthony Hudson said, they don't want to push Miles to more than one game a week. Don't expect Miles to be either in this camp or in this game. However, I would like to see Caleb Wiley called up. Let's just put it that way. He didn't get a chance for the U20 camp that they had last month because Atlanta United needed Caleb Wiley. But I think for this type of thing, it wouldn't surprise me if Caleb Wiley gets a hall pass to go hang out with Hudson and the boys next week. It's only like a 3-day camp total, so don't expect too much.
And we'll keep an eye on that. SoccerForUS POD at Bartimus Prime 19. Bart, as always, but first coffee, and now but second coffee. Enjoy your cup, sir. We'll catch up with you next time.